The full list of cards for Japan's next set, Crimson Haze, has officially been revealed, as well as a couple of cards from the set that's coming afterwards, Mask of Change, both of which will be comprised together for our next mainline set being Twilight Masquerade. So in this video we will be taking a look at some of the noteworthy cards we can expect to see. There are some I have already talked about in another video, so if you're wondering why I didn't mention a certain card, then I probably talked about it in that video, or I thought it wasn't worth talking about, or I want to make a separate video about the card or series of cards. Without further ado, let's get started. Pinsir has an attack that I find very interesting if a little weird, and I'm not exactly sure how it would work in execution. It requires 1 grass energy and a colorless, and reads, discard all energy from this Pokemon. At the end of your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon will be knocked out. This sounds really good, as it puts a lot of pressure on your opponent since their active Pokemon is about to be KO'd if they don't do anything, but I do have some questions. If Pinsir is moved out of the active or knocked out, does the second part still occur? If your opponent switches or retreats their current active into a different Pokemon, is that one knocked out instead? If someone in the comments can clarify this for me, please do. If the attack still works, then this card is pretty good. If not, then it's not as good as I assumed it was. Next up is Leafeon, a very nice piece of grass support thanks to its first attack. For only 1 colorless energy, it reads, you may attach a basic grass energy card from your hand to one of your benched Pokemon. If you attached energy to a Pokemon in this way, heal all damage from that Pokemon. A card that can help fuel up your Pokemon and heal them at the same time. You do need to attach specifically a grass energy, but it can be to any benched Pokemon, and then that Pokemon is fully healed. Only downside being it will use up your attack for the turn, but if it means keeping one of your Pokemon alive, then that's more than worth it, especially if that Pokemon is an EX with a lot of HP. The card could see niche use here and there depending on what decks can utilise it. Continuing with the grass Pokemon, we have Sinistcha EX. Its first attack for a single colourless energy reads, choose one of your opponent's Pokemon and put 2 damage counters on that Pokemon for each basic grass energy in your discard pile, then shuffle those energies into the deck. This attack, while seeming a bit gimmicky, is actually really strong. If you're playing a high amount of grass energy, because in order to knock out basic EX or V Pokemon, this attack will require a minimum of 11 grass energy in the discard. However, depending on how the deck is built, this attack could be very strong. By playing plenty of mill cards and cards that discard, it is very easy to load up your discard with lots of energy, and as you approach the end of the game, those mill cards will only be discarding energy cards, since they'll all be shuffled back into the deck thanks to this attack. Not to mention that the attack is a good counter to mill and stall decks, since you are going to put a large amount of cards back into the deck and deal damage at the same time. Its second attack is also really good, 1 grass and a colourless for 120 damage, and then heal 30 damage from all of your Pokemon. Good damage for low cost and keeps your other Pokemon alive if they've taken any damage. Another pretty good piece of grass support. Next up is Magcargo EX. For 1 fire and 1 colourless, you can do 70 damage and burn the active, so technically it's 90 damage, which isn't bad, but its second attack is even more devastating. For 2 fire and 1 colourless, it does 140 damage, but with an added effect. Each player discards the top card of their deck. This attack does 140 more damage for each energy card discarded this way. This effect is amazing in multiple ways. Not only can you potentially hit 420 damage if you both discard an energy, but the fact alone that you mill a card off the top of your opponent's deck is very powerful, especially if you hit an item or supporter card. Plus you could use a card such as Cypher Maniac's Code Breaking to stack an energy to the top of your deck, so you can guarantee hitting 280 damage. A card that when played with the correct tools and support could see its fair share of play. Infernape is our next fire type from the set, sporting a similar ability to Baxcalibur, but not as powerful. It reads, once during your turn, you may attach a basic fire energy, fighting energy, or 1 of each from your hand to your Pokemon in any way you like. While not letting you attach as much energy as you want, being able to attach an extra energy or 2 every turn is still very strong. The only issue the card suffers from is being a stage 2 evolution and not really having anything else going for it. Its attack can do 200 damage, but you have to discard all energy from it. It could see a bit of play here and there. Maybe he could buddy up with Magcargo. Morpeko is next up. While not a super strong card, it could see a small amount of play in Lightning decks and could help attempt to put Miraidon back on the map. Its ability says, once during your turn you may look at the top card of your deck. then you may discard it. This ability isn't the best. There's no real payoff compared to something like Trekking Shoes, which does the same thing, but you get to draw a card if you discard the top card, and even if you don't, you just get to draw a card. Its attack for 1 lightning lets you attach up to 2 basic energy from your discard to your Pokemon. While Flaffy was better since it was on an ability, so you could use multiple, it's at least something that could help various decks. Plus, you can attach any 2 energy, doesn't have to be lightning. While not super strong, it could see play in at least something. Florges has the chance to see play as a very sneaky Ghost card thanks to its ability, which reads, once during your turn you may flip a coin. If heads, switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active spot. The new active Pokemon is now confused. With multiple Florges on the board, you can use this ability multiple times if the first couple of attempts fail. A free gust of your opponent's Pokemon every turn, and it then confuses them, is very strong, since if you don't retreat that Pokemon to remove confusion, then they will have to flip a coin to see if they will attack or not. The only issue with this card is that it's a stage 2 evolution, so depending on what deck you are playing, it could be included, but not many decks have room for 2 to 3 basics, plus a couple of Florges and Rare Candy. But if you're already playing Rare Candy, then it could be an interesting tech inclusion for the deck. Moving on to Hisuian Arcanine, which has a very powerful first attack, one that is very easy to set up with the correct cards, and to make it even better, it requires no energy. It does 30 damage plus an additional 90 damage if any of your bench Pokemon have damage counters on them. 120 damage for 0 energy is very, very strong. Easy to fulfill with cards such as Gapejaw Bog and Gengar from Lost Origin. Not to mention, using cards such as Radiant Alakazam can move those damage counters to your other Pokemon so you can spread out damage, making this card a very nice inclusion for something like Hisuian Zoroark V, making Arcanine a 1 price second attacker for the deck that, while may seem like Iron Hands bait, can actually one-hit KO Iron Hands since it's weak to fighting. A nice piece of support that may put Hisuian Zoroark back on the ladder. Next up is Greninja EX. Hands down, the best Pokemon in this set. If you guys thought Radiant Greninja was strong, then meet his older brother. This Greninja may not have an ability, but he more than makes up for it with 2 extremely powerful attacks. For 1 water energy, you can do a whopping 170 damage. Yes, for 1 energy. But it also has an added effect. You may search your deck for 1 card and put it into your hand. So, for 1 energy, you do 170 damage, 340 if it's weak to fighting, and then on top of that, you can search for any card in your deck. Any card. How can this get better? Well, its second attack is literally Radiant Greninja's Moonlight Shuriken, but instead of doing 90 damage to Pokemon, it does 120 damage. This card just does it all. High damage for low cost, and then the ability to search anything you want, plus a second attack that can snipe the bench for huge damage, plus it uses water energy, and water has some incredible support Pokemon. Not to mention its pre-evolution Froakie is pretty much a copy-paste of Sobble from Chilling Reign, and you can play it with Greninja EX from the battle deck, which for 2 water can hit 240 if the Pokemon already has damage on it. This deck will see play, 100%. The card is just that strong. I don't need to say anything else. We already talked about Leafeon before, so here's the pre-evolution. The one and only Eevee, which has an attack that can help evolution decks set up a little quicker. For 1 colourless energy, search your deck for a card that evolves from this Pokemon and put it onto this Pokemon to evolve it. A very easy and quick way to help set yourself up going second. While the current selection of evolutions are not the best, there is always the possibility for some EX evolutions to be released in future sets. So while this card may seem just okay for the moment, if those X evolutions are released and turn out to be really good, this card will be a must include for those decks. That's it for all the Pokemon. If you feel like I missed one, then feel free to let me know in the comments what you think about it. If it was an EX like Iron Thorns or Blood Moon Earth Luna, I've already made a separate video talking about those cards. Moving on to the item and support cards. I'll not be talking about the A-Specs, as they will get their own separate video once all the ones from Mask of Change have been revealed. Lana's Assistance is a very nice piece of recursion. Put up to 3 in any combination of Pokemon that don't have a rule box, and basic energy cards from your discard pile into your hand. While not allowing you to get back rule box Pokemon, this card is still decent in getting back your basics and energy cards so you can re-establish some board presence and attempt to set up again. While Super Rod is a little better since it's an item card, so you can use multiple and you can shuffle any Pokemon, meaning you can use a different supporter that turn, Lana still has her uses and could see play depending on the deck. And last but not least, our final card to look at from Crimson Haze is an energy card, Boomerang Energy, which reads, as long as this card is attached to a Pokemon, it provides colorless energy. If this card is discarded by the effect of an attack used by the Pokemon this card is attached to, attach this card from your discard pile to that Pokemon after attacking. This card may seem confusing, but it's actually pretty simple. Let's say you have Radiant Greninja, and you use Moonlight Shuriken. You decide to discard Boomerang Energy and a Water Energy. After the damage has been dealt and the cards have been discarded, the Boomerang Energy will reattach itself to the Radiant Greninja. This energy is very niche, as only a couple of Pokemon in the format discard energy for their attacks, let alone any type of energy, as most of them are type specific. But Radiant Greninja, Greninja EX, the new Ogerpon cards, and maybe some I'm forgetting about, can make use of this card, allowing your discard effects to basically become obsolete, since the energy will reattach itself. A very good card that has its place in the right deck. While we are here, we might as well look at a few cards that were revealed for Mask of Change. There are only a handful, but each one is worth talking about. First up is another Sinistcha. 2 attacks, each of them requiring at least 1 grass energy to use. The first attack reads, put 4 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon in any way you like. 40 damage may not seem like much, but being able to place them on any Pokemon is really good, letting you soften up multiple Pokemon and spread damage around enough to the point where you could take multiple knockouts from a single attack. Then its second attack reads, discard up to 3 basic grass energy cards from your Pokemon in play. This attack does 70 damage for each card discarded this way. With the plethora of grass support we seem to be receiving recently, this attack is also very strong, being able to hit for a maximum of 210 damage for 1 energy, and on a single prize Pokemon. This combined with Sinistcha EX and any other grass support we receive could make for a very strong deck, and given the abundance of Charizard in the format, we'll have a very easy time combating some powerful decks. Next up are 3 Pokemon that are key to the story of the Teal Mask from the first DLC. We have already seen Ogerpon, so here is the Loyal 3, Munkidori, Fezandipiti, and Okidogi, all of which have a very unique ability that gives them additional effects if they have a Darkness energy attached, despite none of them being Darkness type. Munkidori can, once during your turn, if this Pokemon has a Darkness energy attached to it, you may move up to 3 damage counters from one of your Pokemon to one of your opponent's Pokemon. With Fezandipiti, if this Pokemon has a Darkness energy attached to it, and if any damage is done to this Pokemon by attacks, flip a coin. If heads, prevent that damage. And Okidogi, if this Pokemon has any Darkness energy attached to it, it gets 100 HP and its attacks do 100 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. Hands down, the best one here is Okidogi. While the other 2 have decent abilities, the damage output just isn't up to par. While Okidogi can hit 170 damage for 2 energy and have a huge 230 HP. Now you may be thinking, well technically it's 3 energy because you need 2 fighting and then you need a Darkness to get the boost. No you don't. Thanks to Luminous Energy, you only need 2 energy, since Luminous Energy counts as being every type of energy at the same time, so it is both a fighting and a Darkness energy. Okidogi could find its home in some decks, maybe something like Lugia, being able to counter Iron Hands EX. The only issue being you can't have another special energy on Okidogi, otherwise Luminous Energy just provides colourless. So you will need to play Fighting Energy as well, but the ability to have a 230 HP basic that can deal 170 damage every turn is more than worth it. The only 2 supporters revealed so far are brother and sister, Carmine and Kieran. Carmine says, if you go first, you may play this card during your first turn, discard your hand and draw 5 cards. A Professor's Research card that can ignore the restrictions of not being allowed to play a support card going first. A good card if you see it, but unless your hand is really bad, then there isn't really a point in using it going first. Plus with cards such as Squawkabilly, we already have a first turn discard and draw card, but the option is there if you decide to play it. Plus, Lumineon can retrieve it from the deck. Kieran on the other hand has 2 effects, but you can only use one of them. The first says, switch your active Pokemon with one of your benched Pokemon. A switching effect on a supporter is very useful even if we still have Switch and Switch Cart in the format. But what does the second effect do? During this turn, your Pokemon's attacks do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon EX or active Pokemon V. A supporter with 2 effects to choose from is really good, as it means you can cut down on other cards that do the same thing. So instead of playing 4 Switch and 4 Choice Belt, you can just play 4 Kieran and choose the effect you need when necessary. Both of these are good, and Kieran has the benefit of increasing damage against a V and EX Pokemon, meaning you don't need to waste your 1 A-Spec for maximum belt, and you don't need to play Choice Belt, and can instead play just Kieran and a different and more powerful A-Spec. And our final card of this video is Bug Catching Set, which reads, look at the top 7 cards of your deck. You may choose up to 2 in any combination of grass Pokemon and basic grass energies you find there, reveal them and put them into your hand. Grass support seems to be the main theme of this set, but given Ogerpon EX, it only makes sense. A good card, not much else to say, helps you dig for grass Pokemon and energy, and you can choose up to 2 if you find any. You'll definitely see playing grass decks if they start popping up. Twilight Masquerade is looking very, very good. Plenty of new generic cards to help already existing decks, and some brand new powerhouses that could form the basis of new strategies to come. Crimson Haze releases, it's already out now actually, the script's a bit old, so in the next couple of weeks we will be able to see just how this set could impact our meta once we receive Twilight Masquerade, how certain decks evolve and what new decks could arise. Granted, it's only half of what we will receive, as Mask of Change will be coming in April for Japan, and we still have a lot more cards to be revealed from that upcoming set. But that gives us plenty of time to study and prepare for when our next main set drops near the end of May.